All right, Cooper Kupp is headed back home to the state of Washington. He will stay in the NFC West. He is now a Seattle Seahawk for quite a bit of money. NFC West is always fun. In Nashville tonight, maybe if this show goes well, by the end of it, we'll get the cowboy hat on. We're going out to dinner in Nashville a little bit later tonight. So that's fun. So is the NFC West. Kupp to the Seattle Seahawks, where Sam Darnold also is, the former 49ers quarterback. And it gives us a good chance to talk about the Brandon Aiyuk situation. 49ers receiver may still be on the trade block. And I was waiting for this Kupp domino to drop because a lot of teams were interested in him. I'm sure at a certain price, the 49ers would have been interested in Cooper Kupp. I still think that he is a good wide receiver. He definitely isn't in his prime anymore. Some of the separation stats have definitely taken an alarming dip. But when I was watching DeMarcus Robinson this week after the 49ers signed the former Ram to a 2-year deal, I did notice Cooper Kupp a lot on the tape. But he could still play. He's going to be 32 years old this next season, but he can still play. And the Seahawks obviously got better with this signing. Now, I think that they downgraded overall at the wide receiver position, moving DK Metcalf, losing Tyler Lockett, and bringing in Cooper Kupp. But I think they're going to be better at QB. I believe that Sam Darnold is better than Geno Smith. The bottom line is that the Seahawks are going to look different. We can throw a lot of the offensive stats out of the window because one of their top receivers and their top QB, their QB1 is literally different. But from the whole receiver market domino perspective, it is worth it to begin talking again about Brandon Aiyuk because I wanted to bookend the week, right? It's Friday afternoon. We're about to head out to dinner here because I'm in Central Time right now. I'm not in Pacific at the moment. We're about to head out to dinner. We're about to put a bow on the first week of free agency. The primary wave of free agency is obviously finished. That is in the rearview mirror. The 49ers have even sent out their press release of the 7 players that they signed. Mac Jones came in a separate email press release from the first 6, but that's when you know that the 49ers' big moves in free agency have finished, and they weren't big moves this year. They weren't big-time money spenders in free agency. In fact, they had the largest spending deficit in the history of NFL free agency. They let over $300 million sign elsewhere, and they only brought in about $37 million worth of salary into the building. But that was all according to plan. I talked about that in the video this morning. That's one I would encourage you guys to go and check out. What I wanted to do this afternoon with the first week in the books is really wrap up what's happened and circle back to the Brandon Aiyuk situation, because that's all that we were talking about entering free agency. The 49ers, could they possibly trade Brandon Aiyuk the season after he signed a $30 million extension with the football team? Well, I think the fact that Cooper Kupp has landed up in Seattle, not with the 49ers for some kind of discounted price under $10 million. For Kupp, it was actually $15 million a year, 3 years, $45 million. That is expensive for a receiver who has had declining production, declining separation statistics, and is going to be 32 years old this next season. That is expensive, but Seattle was willing to pay it. But the more that this game of veteran receiver musical chairs settles down without Brandon Aiyuk moving, the higher and higher the likelihood that he stays with the 49ers. And it was always more unlikely than likely that he'd be traded. But the way that I have illustrated this is, unless you are a 49ers A-list pillar piece, you are not completely safe this offseason. And to share the A-list pillar pieces, we have the 2025 depth chart and the roster right here. I have shaded the A-list pillars in yellow, and I explained a lot of this in the big piece this morning. It's already done 35,000 views. It's blowing up. People are using it as their way to, I think, really summarize the 49ers strategy. There's so much unnecessary hysteria and freakouts about what the 49ers are doing, as if this is the first time an NFL team has remodeled its roster. The 49ers are in roster remodeling. And when you remodel the roster, it's a lot like a house. It's a lot like in any building that you'd remodel, but you want to keep the structure there. They're going to keep the A-list players aboard. They've determined that those players are Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Deommodore Lenoir. Those are the untouchables right now for the 49ers. Those are the players who form the foundation. That's like, the structural pillars of the house. The rest of this, they're just filling in. I think they need somebody shaded in yellow at every single position to win a Super Bowl, which is why I think they still need to spruce up the defensive line. I think that the goal, obviously, to do that is through the draft. Malik Mustafa needs to emerge with another good year so they have somebody at safety. But at receiver, the guy that can theoretically do it, the guy who they paid to do it last year, is Brandon Aiyuk. And we could even shade his name in yellow just very temporarily. This is what it would look like if Aiyuk was one of those core pieces for the 49ers. He currently isn't, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to move back to the injury shading for Brandon Aiyuk, but we all know what happened last offseason. It was an extremely acrimonious negotiation between the 49ers and Aiyuk. Ultimately ended in a stalemate agreement, I would say. The 49ers and Aiyuk, for the 4 years, $120 million. They got Brandon Aiyuk back into practice right before the regular season. And they left themselves an out after the first year because he doesn't have this big $20+ million option bonus dropping until April 1st. Now, it is guaranteed. So whichever team he's on at the time, Brandon Aiyuk is going to get this money regardless. But the 49ers don't have to disperse it. It doesn't have to hit their salary cap until April 1st. They left this little window to potentially trade him this offseason in case things went off the rails. And of course, I would say they did go off the rails even after the agreement. He didn't play well for the first 7 games of the season. Then he tore his ACL and his MCL. But they went so far off the rails that the 49ers probably won't be able to trade him, right? Because it's difficult to offload a receiver with a torn ACL and a torn MCL trying to come back from those injuries. It's not unheard of, but it's tough. I just have been pointing out throughout this whole process that the 49ers did leave that out. But the more this game of musical chairs at wide receiver settles down, the higher the chance, and it's already high, that Brandon Aiyuk stays with the 49ers this season. Mike does point out, though, that Amari Cooper, the 49ers were interested in trading him for Brandon Aiyuk and a couple picks with the Cleveland Browns last year. Amari Cooper is still a free agent. And funny enough, Amari Cooper is actually younger than Cooper Kupp. Amari Cooper is 30 and Cooper Kupp is 31. This summer, he's going to be turning 32 years old. So Amari Cooper is obviously a legitimate wide receiver in this league. It's not like he's 32, 33 years old, and he still is a free agent, which just goes to show you that there are many potential roster maneuvers still happening. And you could say never say never to anything, especially after the week that we just covered with the San Francisco 49ers, who are betting on their pillars. This is from the video earlier this morning. The text title that I put down at the bottom of the screen. You could see the pillars shaded in yellow for San Francisco. Want to go through the week, though, because this was a hell of a week. Mike, did you send me the Darnold Brock Purdy video? Is that the one that I see right here? Because this is going to be a good one when we're talking about Cooper Kupp to Seattle. Kupp, by the way, back home. He's from Yakima, Washington. And he played his college football at Eastern Washington. Guess who Cooper Kupp's teammate in college was? He was maybe the best wide receiver duo in the entire nation. Kendrick Bourne was Cooper Kupp's college teammate. They played on a red field over there in Cheney, Washington. That is on the eastern side of the state, not far from Spokane. Yakima is like mid-state Washington. So Cooper went east. Kendrick Bourne came from Portland. The former 49er, the former Ram, now Kendrick Bourne, obviously out of the NFC West altogether, but Cooper Kupp stays in the division, goes back to his home state, and guess who's going to be throwing the football to him? Sam Darnold. Darnold, who rehabilitated his career with the 49ers, had his opening press conference yesterday, and he credited Brock Purdy. Listen to this from Sam Darnold up in Seattle, who's now going to be distributing the ball to another weapon, Cooper Kupp.
And I really, thank Brock a ton, Brock Purdy, for, just his style of play and how he kind of described his style. Is like, we got a ton of great playmakers on offense. Like, my job is just to play point guard and get the ball in their hands and let them go do great things with the rock. And when I started to change my thought process as a quarterback to kind of just getting the ball in my guys' hands, then that's kind of where it unlocked for me a little bit.
Isn't that cool? One more time at the start. I know I cut off the start of that one with Sam Darnold.
Okay, and I really, thank Brock a ton, Brock Purdy, for, just his style of play and how he kind of described his style is like, we got a ton of great playmakers on offense. Like, my job is just to play point guard.
I still remember writing that big article on Brock Purdy in 2023 when Sam Darnold was on the team. He was talking about playing point guard, distributing the football, efficient football. That is how you play QB. It's not by sitting back there and running around for 25 seconds and then heaving a pass deep. I know Purdy had to do some of that this year because the 49ers weren't separating. They had zero separation. They ranked number 32, dead last. So that's a last resort. We know Purdy can do it. That's something that leads to the quarterback ceiling being higher. But at the core of everything, it's about distributing the football. And that's what Sam Darnold was able to really get in his head as the backup for Brock Purdy with the 49ers. Now he's with the Seattle. Cooper Kupp is going to be there as well. And we are talking about Brandon Aiyuk. Is he going to be the receiver on the other side, the top receiver on the other side for the 49ers? They added Demarcus Robinson this week. And if we go and we look at the 49ers roster here, you can see at receiver, Robinson is listed as one of their top three right now because Aiyuk is still recovering from the knee injury. Jennings, Pearsall, Robinson, the top three, assuming Aiyuk isn't healthy yet. Jacob Cowing waiting in the wings. They're definitely going to need at least five. Usually you're going to roster six at that wide receiver position. So if the 49ers do move on from Brandon Aiyuk, because nothing is impossible this offseason, I think they're almost certainly going to have to bring in another veteran. Demarcus Robinson wouldn't be it for the 49ers. And that's why we say that Amari Cooper is actually younger than Cooper Kupp. If you're San Francisco, you've got to keep all options on the table, especially considering everything that's happened in this free agency period. We could go back and we could recap it. It's Friday afternoon. We're about to go out to dinner. It's going to be great. It's afternoon turning into evening here. It's past 6 o'clock where I am in Nashville. I already showed you guys the cowboy hat. If you guys want me to put the cowboy hat on, you can give me an emoji of the cowboy hat in the comments section, and we'll go for that at the end of the show. But it all started with Luke Farrell, the former Jacksonville Jaguar, signing on with the 49ers. And that coincided with the release of Kyle Juszczyk. The first day of this week was tremendously emotional for the 49ers and for their fans. And it's something that I hope to capture as well as I could, especially on Monday night when, all this news did come down. Kyle Juszczyk leaving the 49ers, and this on the heels of Deebo Samuel being traded away. That officially came to be on Wednesday to Washington. Obviously, Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga signed their contracts with Denver, and that solidified their departures from San Francisco. So everything started on a really heavy note this week, and it's never easy to remodel because the vast majority of this roster, of any NFL roster, is not going to be filled with players shaded in yellow. It's not going to be filled with core players. It's just impossible. So at a certain point, time comes to move on from players. And the 49ers did a lot of that work on Monday. Big stylistic shift around Brock Purdy. And that really shifted into a Joey Bosa watch. He ended up signing with the Buffalo Bills for 12 or 13 million with upward expandability up to 15 million. So the 49ers didn't pick Joey Bosa up. And then at that point, it became really, really crystal clear that the 49ers were running a very, very strict efficiency budget for the rebuilding of their defense that made this a lot like the Rams rebuild, and in many ways like how the Philadelphia Eagles have been able to restock their defensive line over the past couple seasons. And you have to give the 49ers credit for sticking to their guns, not veering out of the lane of discipline. I think that Shanahan, Lynch, Parag Marathe, Jed York are all aligned on this. That's what's really important. That's what we talked about last Saturday leading up into free agency. But the 49ers did not add Joey Bosa. They did not outbid the Buffalo Bills. They are going for youth along their defensive line. So anyway, the 49ers then moved to actually signing some guys, signing some veterans. 30-year-old veteran receiver Demarcus Robinson, the teammate of Cooper Kupp, 2 years, $9.5 million for Robinson. The 49ers also added Richie Grant, a safety. They added a couple safeties between Richie Grant and Jason Pinnock. Pinnock's deal for $2.2 million, fully guaranteed. Richie Grant for $1.5 million with $200,000 of that guaranteed. So Pinnock obviously higher up on the pay scale, and I think that he, with his contract, has a chance to start. And that's all related to the 49ers trying to repair their run defense after they saw some regression from Jair Brown at that safety position. They signed Luke Gifford, a fast linebacker, but more of a special teams ace. Obviously, one of the four pillars that I've been talking about this week that the 49ers have to improve is special teams, which was down at number 32 last year. Well, Luke Gifford is a player with, 340 plus special team snaps last year. 49ers definitely counting on him to work under Brant Boyer and Colt Anderson, the assistant special teams coordinator, to help improve that position group. And maybe he can even compete for one of the linebacker spots, which could make him valuable depth for the 49ers over the course of the season. I still remember in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, Super Bowl 58, this was the one in Vegas against the Chiefs. He saw Dre Greenlaw tear his Achilles, and there were other injuries for the 49ers. It got really, really sparse for San Francisco at that linebacker level, and Oren Burks didn't have a great game. And Oren Burks was the one covering Travis Kelce at some key spots for the 49ers, and they lost to the Chiefs in that Super Bowl. So somebody like Luke Gifford who can move. I've gotten a chance to watch some of the tape. Greg Papa is right. We're talking about on the radio the other day. He can move. He can fit the 49ers, what they're doing schematically, defensively, what Robert Saleh wants at that linebacker position. I think he can fit that as a good depth piece for the 49ers, and it's worth keeping an eye out for him. Same with Curtis Robinson. I mean, he's going to be a special team signing coming off the torn ACL, but he was flying around last year, and that could have been good, valuable reserve linebacker depth. But the 49ers never got to enjoy that after he tore his ACL on September 27th at practice. So they re-signed him, good bargain rate. We'll see where Curtis can slot in for the 49ers, but I'm sure that special teams is going to be the primary avenue of contribution for him. Of course, in the midst of all these signings, the 49ers also made even more releases. And I don't think the releases were complicated at all. One of them was Leonard Floyd. The other one was Malik Collins. Javon Hargrave had been anticipated for a long time. So between Hargrave, Collins, and Leonard Floyd, it was very clear that the 49ers are thinning out the brush. They're raking the forest here because the run defense was so bad last season. I mean, there's very little room to go down for the 49ers anymore this next season when it comes to their defensive performance. They were number 29 against the run, number 26 overall. Every single defensive lineman except for Nick Bosa had a negative run defense score last year. So it's very clear that the 49ers have seen a roster that's too old, too slow, and it aged out really quick. This kind of stuff happens at the snap of a finger. They were trying to cram one more in 2024, but it didn't work out with all the free agent signings. So they've seen a roster that's too old, too slow, too injured, and they're saying we've got to revitalize this roster around those core pieces. So the Leonard Floyd signing came in on Wednesday, right when the 49ers were signing guys like Pinnock, when they signed Trey Brown, new cornerback who was with Seattle. I mean, we're talking about the Seahawks right now, and Cooper Kupp and Sam Darnold. Well, a little exchange of players going on in between all the NFC West, right? You've got Trey Brown, cornerback who really was pushed down the depth chart by Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon up in Seattle, but was actually PFF's number one graded press coverage corner in 2023 before some ankle issues really slowed him down in 2024. That's a good value add for the 49ers that they were able to add right at the turn of the new league year. He's got the same measurables as DJ Reed. And when we look at the cornerback success that the 49ers have had over the course of the years, it's come from tenacious cornerbacks. It hadn't come from guys like Ambry Thomas, who may or may not have been trying to throw some shade at the 49ers on social media, although he later claimed that he wasn't. That happened, I think, yesterday. Hadn't come from guys like Akella Witherspoon, although he has developed into a nicer piece over his time in the league ever since leaving the 49ers. It's come from guys like Diamara Lenore, from guys like DJ Reed. And Trey Brown has the same type of physical measurements as a DJ Reed. But yes, the 49ers are still short at defensive tackle. And, as we wrap up this entire week and the really busy part of free agency, because it's obvious that the 49ers are not going to be big spenders this year, we do recognize where they're going to have to really target their efforts in the NFL draft. And a good thing, it's a very loaded defensive line class. It's going to have to happen at this position. Now, they could obviously use more in the secondary. They could use more at linebacker. They can use a tackle of the future on the offensive side of the ball. They can use another running back. I mean, all NFL teams can always use more talent at any given time. But where the 49ers are acutely short right now is that defensive tackle spot that you see right here. I could highlight the entire defensive line. You've got Jordan Elliott, Evan Anderson. They re-signed Kevin Gibbons this week, which was nice. That's a good depth piece for the 49ers. And Kalia Davis. But if you want to be the Eagles, if you want to be the Rams, if you want to be the 2019 49ers, you're going to have to invest big time in the defensive line. It's been a while since they've truly had a defensive lineman hit. Drake Jackson was in that 2022 draft. He's obviously been hurt for most of his career. Kalia Davis, a lower pick there. Evan Anderson was an undrafted free agent. That's been the closest thing to a D-line hit lately, because Robert Beal Jr. still hasn't really panned out for San Francisco. So anyway, the point is that the 49ers have much work to do along the defensive line. That's why I made the video that I did this morning. Again, that one's setting some records. That one's probably near 40,000. Let's all go check that one out as soon as you're done here with this live. The 49ers plan, though, as this week is coming to an end, is very clear. And it hasn't changed because they signed Mac Jones. The plan for the 49ers is to pay Brock Purdy, build the team around him and the other core pieces shaded in yellow, and focus the NFL draft on the defensive line. If you're lucky and one of the great tackles like Armand Membu is available when you pick at number 11, maybe you go that way in the first round, and then you go defensive tackle and defensive end over your next 4 or 5 picks. I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers went that crazy on the defensive line in the draft, but that's the general framework here. They haven't addressed the trenches in free agency because it was overpriced as hell. They definitely have to address the trenches in the in the NFL draft coming up in about 6 weeks. It's not a complicated formula to decipher for what the 49ers are operating with right now. Later in the week, they also released Tabor Pepper, the long snapper, and they brought in a new long snapper, 39-year-old John Weeks, who's, I guess, a Houston franchise legend. He's been there for 15 years, and I should say he had been there for 15 years, will no longer be a Houston Texan. He's going to be with the 49ers. They're actually paying him a little bit more than they would have had to pay Tabor Pepper. So 49ers feel that they're getting an upgrade over their former long snapper. Anyway, Cooper Kupp to Seattle. That is the flavor of the moment. $15 million a year. If you're thinking, why didn't the 49ers sign him? Well, there's your answer. 3 years, $45 million for a 32-year-old receiver. He's going to be 32 years old in relative decline. Cooper Kupp's rank and ability to get open. This is a crazy stat. I got to get this one up on the screen for you guys. Mike just sent this to me. I think this was from ESPN. Going to get this up on the screen and check this out. Kupp's ability to get open over the years. 2021 was the historically good year for Cooper Kupp, ranked number 15 of 160 qualifying receivers per ESPN's tracking data. 2022 dropped down to 71 out of 50. 2023 down to 102 of 153. And this past year, number 141 of 149. Now, I still believe that this is a skilled receiver. The tracking data definitely doesn't like Cooper Kupp anymore. But I will say that he can still contribute. He can still do something for Seattle. But the price point of $15 million per year is steep. And it's a place the 49ers weren't going to go. Maybe 1 year, $7 or $8 million. Would have insulated their receiver room nice, given them even more optionality with Brandon Aiyuk. But this right here for 3 years, $45 million, it's a tough sell. But Sam Darnold's going to have to pair with Cooper Kupp moving forward. His average separation score from week 12 onward this year was 51st of 69 wide receivers, and his route win rate was 44th of 69 wide receivers. So you've got somebody with some vet savvy, but obviously physically not the same player that he was early in his career, which is why I think this is a notable signing for the Seattle Seahawks, because they have needed to pick up some of the DK Metcalf slack. And Cooper Kupp is from Yakima. He's going back home in Washington, but this is not a signing that's going to scare the NFC West. It's going to be fascinating to see Darnold, Kupp, JSN, all those guys going for it with the Seahawks against the 49ers and the Rams next year as Cooper Kupp does stay on the West Coast. The Brandon Aiyuk situation is going to remain something that we track. I've just gone through all of the 49ers week in free agency, and we're back to square one. We're back to talking about where Brandon Aiyuk is going to be next year. Again, in all likelihood, still with the 49ers, because they may be forced into this. If they can't trade him, if nobody's willing to take his contract from them and give the 49ers even more draft capital, they've got 11 picks in this draft, by the way, the most of any NFL team this year. Nobody's willing to do that. Then the 49ers' best bet would be to keep Brandon Aiyuk aboard, see if he can work his way back into that A-list core where he was, I think, exiting the 2023 season. That's why they wanted to pay him. That's why they did pay him. It was looking like this exiting 2023. But stuff has happened since then, and Brandon Aiyuk is no longer a member of the 49ers A-list core. They need one at that wide receiver position. Maybe Juwan can grab part of that responsibility if Brandon Aiyuk doesn't do that. Mike tells me Keenan Allen also a free agent right now. So Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper. Keenan's not younger than Cooper Kupp, but Amari Cooper is younger than Cooper Kupp. So 49ers have some optionality here potentially over the next couple weeks. Keenan Allen's ability to get open among wide receivers per ESPN's tracking data. This is good. So we said that Cooper Kupp was down near the bottom of the league, number 141 of 159. Keenan Allen's number 51, so he ranks much better. Allen ranked number 1 in this tracking data in 2023, and he's not a young player anymore. Dropped down to number 51 this past season. There's some variability from year to year with guys like Allen. It goes from like 17 to 30 to number 1 to number 51. Either way, it does seem to me that Keenan does still have some gas left in the tank. So the musical chairs haven't fully stopped moving at the receiver position. And that is all you need to know when asking if something's possible. Something's always possible in the NFL, especially if musical chairs have not stopped spinning around. All right, we're leaving the dinner here in a couple minutes. Wonder if there were any cowboy hats in the comment section. I don't see any, so you guys don't get a look at it. All good. Maybe next time. Dante has a great comment. Lombardi yourself's going to love this one. Jennings is as much a symbol of the 49ers as Kittle to me. That's from Dante DeSalvo. I think that... All right, I got this back in hand. Mike said that there were a bunch of them in the comment section earlier. So I think this is a great point. Juwan Jennings, just like Kittle, he's a yak bro. Just like Kittle, he blocks his ass off. He pisses opponents off with his blocking ability. There's a lot of toughness. There's no nonsense to Juwan Jennings, and he's from this area. He's from this Nashville area. So I think there's been more than one time that Juwan Jennings has worn one of these, one of the cowboy hats. More than once it has happened. We're going to get you guys next show. You guys can take a look at it right now. It's a nice one. You know, there's a funny cowboy hat story that comes from training camp in 1994. 49ers ran a prank on Ken Norton Jr. coming from the Cowboys. We'll get that story to you guys next time. Maybe we'll get Juwan Jennings in a cowboy hat as well. All right, guys, take care. Time for dinner. We'll see you soon.